Hey everyone, Captain Do Shit here. Today I'm working on one of my favorite things to do. I call it the Shitbox Shakedown. All right, and I mean that in the most endearing way. I have a customer's shitbox in today, and by shitbox I mean it's an older car. It's pretty beat up. It doesn't look great, right? But it's still functional. And this is a shitbox shakedown worth doing because this one's made by Toyota. So if I find that the important parts of the unibody are not rusty, right? Are not rotted all the way through in critical areas and look like they're going to hold up for another, 5, 10, 15 years in the Midwest, which is where we are, then, I'm going to say, hey, let's look at the suspension. Let's look at the brakes. Let's kind of look at everything. I already have an engine code that I pulled that shows that an upstream O2 sensor needs to be addressed. That's actually a pretty important thing. But when I have an older car like this, even if it is a Toyota, which is legendarily reliable, of course, I still want to go through it before recommending to the customer that we start putting more money in it than is absolutely necessary, right? To keep them getting back and forth to work. All right, let's get it up in the air. So as you can see, it don't really look half bad under here, especially for a shitbox, man. The condition of the unibody is making me think this is worth maintaining if the customer can afford to do it. I'm not going to say I didn't find any rust or any problems. The worst rust in places that I found it pretty much looks like this. Jabbed it with some screwdrivers. It's still hard metal under it. I jabbed all around there. The subframe itself in the rear looks super rusty, but again, it's a lot of surface rust. It'll eventually turn into rot, but for now, I see another 10 years in Michigan with this thing if you start taking care of it. And even more if anyone wants to restore it, but that might be a little bit above this one's pay grade. Either way, the unibody is not bad, all things considered. I did, however, find what appears to be some kind of transmission fluid leak here. And if you look up here on the front of the engine, you have what appears to be, I'm guessing, a power steering fluid leak. I'm going to have to look a little further into that, but that's what it appears to be at the moment. Okay, so as you can see, the brake pads are good. I'm just showing you right front here, but they all pretty much look the same. The rears have a little less material, but they're still well within usable range. And very important to note that the outside and inside pads look to be about the same thickness all the way around, all four corners. That's how you can tell that the calipers are floating properly and not seizing up and wearing them unevenly. And I mean, the rotors aren't like perfect, but they're not bad. So I think that semi-recently the brakes were done on this. The only real problem with the brakes is that if you go to the back here, you see that we have kind of a composite braking system where the hand brake or parking brake is connected to a tiny drum brake that's in the center hub of this rotor, but that the hydraulic braking system uses a disc system with a caliper. Not a bad setup, just like on my Subaru, but I think what happened is last time they had the brakes done, they either couldn't afford the extra money, didn't want to spend the extra money on servicing this part of it as well, or the mechanic who was doing it for them just didn't know what he was doing and didn't recommend that properly. Because the handbrake, it kind of works, but not really. So I think it just wasn't serviced last time these brakes are done. Not a huge safety issue, more of a pain in the butt thing, especially since it's a stick shift. The wheel bearings all seem to be decent enough, not to really need service. I need to still get it back down on the ground and see about the shocks, but yeah, the rest of the suspension components appear to be decent enough for safety, which is kind of what we want to see on a car like this. So we also have a P0031 code, I think it was, if I'm remembering correctly. Anyway, it's the heater circuit for the upstream O2 sensor, sensor 1, bank 1. Of course, there's only one bank on this inline 4-cylinder. So sensor 1 would be the upstream one right here at the manifold. And pretty much the fix for that is either identify something wrong with the wiring, like an open or a short to ground. And if there's nothing wrong with the wiring, then just replace the O2 sensor. So basically what I recommended to this customer is they've got themselves a good shitbox that passed the Shitbox shakedown. However, they should, as soon as possible, get a couple new key fobs so it's not such a pain in the ass to start their awesome shitbox, and replace that upstream O2 sensor so that the engine is running healthy and with good fuel mileage, good performance, and clean. I also recommended that she changes the oil with 5W30 synthetic every 3,000 miles and keeps an eye on what might be a slow leak on the right rear tire. Other than that, she's good to go. She only spent $1,000 on that shitbox too, and it turned out good. So, you know, whether you got a shitbox or just a classic, JDM, USDM, I don't care, even European. If you want me to look at it, solve any immediate problems you might have with it, no extra charge. I'll take a look and let you know what it needs to be perfect, what it needs to be comfortable, what it needs to function in a healthy, safe way as soon as possible. And I don't get frivolous. You know, I told her, as far as the transmission and the power steering pump go, I told her to run those into the ground, honestly. And with the power steering, she can address that if she feels like it. It's a lightweight little car. You don't necessarily need power steering. I mean, you'll really notice it in the parking lots, but that's up to the driver. With the transmission, I would just put a remanufactured one in there after it completely shits out, but I'd squeeze every ounce of juice out of it I can. Because why not? We're talking about $1,000 car. She's getting more than her money's worth out of this beast.